Now, the major divide that I see in the world is that people are trapped in these echo chambers that tend to reinforce internal voices and then shun or discourage the pursuit of external voices. So all of the epistemic truths are centered on just a couple voices, and then all the other forms of knowledge are basically shunned. And for me, I found that when somebody's in an echo chamber, oftentimes leaning into them in an aggressive manner just reinforces their point of view, right? There's like a thing that happens. Like, imagine you're in a relationship with somebody and, you say to your girlfriend, like, hey, I just want you to know you f***ed up today and let me tell you why. That conversation is never going well, right? Or like when you start off in an aggressive tone, somebody's brain will instantly flip a switch, and now they're in kind of like character defense mode. They're not going to listen to anything you say because now you're attacking them personally, or it feels like a character attack. So I found that the best way to kind of penetrate into other worlds, other kind of echo chambers, is to try to avoid the really aggressive and dominating tone and be more like, listen, I understand you've got problems, I know what your issues are, but like maybe I can provide like a little bit more of a reasonable solution than you guys who literally want to tie anchors to yourselves and jump off cliffs,
That's actually a really interesting point that Destiny made, that the conversation, the way it should go, whether it's like a civil nuanced conversation or a dunk, it probably depends on, well, a number of different factors, right? Like you said, like if you're talking with, like if you're debating like a neo-Nazi, you probably do need to put the beat down on a little bit, like not physically, of course, but rhetorically. Especially if they're like not like a low level follower who like fell into this, but like a full on, like, one of the leaders, like he did with Nick Fuentes. Like Destiny fucking, he went hard. He was also like friendly-ish, like he wasn't like a complete dick and like insulting him, but he went hard on him, and like, damn, he put him in his place, which is probably what was necessary in that debate. But at the same time, he's also capable of having conversations with people too. Like I was talking with someone in real life actually about this. I'm like, I actually appreciate that. One thing that Destiny's able to do is have conversations um, with people in multiple different modes, where he'll be like the super hardcore debate bro, but he'll also be able to have those nuanced conversations, including with people who disagree with him. These super deep conversations where it is an educational moment, and also it could be educational for yourself too. That's one thing that is worth considering. Like, so for instance, one thing that happened the other day is someone commented on my video about the Skullgirls controversy, and they're like, does it really matter if, well, the people, they said, I don't know if it's a he or a she, but they said that people are criticizing the Skullgirls review bombers because they didn't have based on their playtime on Steam. But what if they bought the game on other platforms? And so my initial response, I was typing it up, was, well, just because you bought the game on one platform, like let's say you bought the game on Xbox or PlayStation, right? You could review it on those Xbox or PlayStation stores. Do you really need to go to the Steam page and review bomb it there? But as I was typing that, I started thinking of counter arguments. And it's a lot more of a nuanced question than you'd think, actually. And it has broader implications than you might think. What is the purpose of a review? And I don't know, right? There could be multiple purposes. The purpose could be different for each person, or different depending on the context. Is the purpose of the review to warn consumers, right? If the purpose of a review is to warn consumers that, like, hey, look, this is a scam, this company's running whatever, it's an extremely poor quality product, then like it makes sense that you would probably want to warn people to stay away from that product so that they don't get scammed by that company, or they don't buy an inferior product that they're going to be unhappy with. Like a consumer advocacy type situation. It's like, okay, in that case, like if you bought a washer and this company, the washer was trash and just completely it broke down after like 2 weeks, and the company wouldn't even refund you or repair it or anything. They wouldn't even send you parts. So like just a complete disaster all the way through. Well, but you bought it from one website. You bought it from Amazon. And you go to Lowe's and you leave the review on the washer on Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever, and or pick anything, and you leave a bad review there too. Maybe on all of the platforms. Hmm. Is that immoral? Probably not. What if it's a video game? Hmm. What is the purpose of a video game review? Is it to, because obviously part of it is the consumer aspect. It is the, I'm going to spend my money, unless the game's free, but even then, you're spending your time, which is a valuable commodity. So you're spending your time, possibly your money, on a game. Is it just the consumer aspect that we care about? Probably not. Probably not. We probably do care about more than that. We probably do care about the artistic value. And how do you analyze that? I don't know. I don't know how you analyze that. And so as I'm typing this response in the comments of my own video, replying to somebody, I'm like, I'll have to think about this some more, and I guess now I am. I didn't. I guess now I am thinking about it more. But yeah, how do we think about this? And then of course you're gonna have the people who review bomb like restaurants because some viral video or viral allegation, true or not, hits the news or hits social media. And so people review bomb like restaurants and stuff like, oh, the owner's a Nazi. And like, we all generally look at that very poorly, or at least I think most people do. Aside from the people doing it, most people I think look at that and are like, that's probably not cool. Like this guy tweeted something dumb 15 years ago. Now you're review bombing his restaurant. And but from their point of view, like, is that moral for them to do that? Or is it not even just from their point of view, but just generally, is it moral? Like, what is the morality of review bombing? I don't know. Is it an immoral act? Does it depend on the circumstances? Does it matter? Is it all just bullshit? And then what is the morality here? Because morality, I think, is generally based upon harm. But is there a degree in which we think of morality in a different sense? In which we think of morality as the kind of society that we want to live in? Or at least, I mean, yeah, the kind of society we want to live in. Like, we want to live in a society, ideally, where we have a great deal of freedom and where people are more or less like nice to each other. That if you're driving down the highway, you have like a reasonable expectation that someone's not going to cut you off on purpose, uh, or that if someone has like if you accidentally like cut somebody off, that they're not going to like chase you down to the gas station and pull out a shotgun and blow your head off, right? Like, you have like a reasonable expectation that that's probably not going to happen. Like, so there's certain things that we want, and a lot of that's based around harm. But what do we think of things that we want that aren't necessarily harmful? Or is the review bombing thing an aspect of harm? And so we should put it in the harm camp, since after all, the business owner who gets review bombed is going to feel harmed. The consumer, right? The consumer whose favorite restaurant closes because of unfair reviews, right? They're going to feel harmed to some extent. Um, and then what about when it's like an amorphous corporation? Like, if you're review bombing a video game or a movie, I don't know. I don't know. It's there's interesting questions here. I think generally the morality based upon harm is correct. Um, but if what we care about ultimately is the conscious experience of not just humans probably, but of all sentient life, but mostly humans, then presumably there are things we want to happen. That doesn't mean that there should be laws, right? There's a difference between this should be legal or illegal, and this should be is moral or immoral. Like, you, you don't have a moral obligation to be nice to people necessarily, right? You really don't. But you probably have a moral obligation to not be like the world's biggest asshole. Right? You have a moral obligation not to kill people, not to hurt people. Again, harm. It goes back to harm. But there are other things that we value too, right? I value, even if it were the case that environmental pollution had no negative effects on humans or animals, like, I probably still wouldn't want to live in a society with widespread environmental pollution, right? My subjective experience of the world would be worse from having tons of litter all over the ground, right? Even if that litter didn't harm any humans or animals or anything experiencing a conscious experience. It just would be I mean, but is it that harm, right? Is that a sense of harm? Like if I walk out of my house and I go for a jog around the neighborhood or whatever, and I see like tons of trash just stockpiled everywhere, like, and my life experience is degraded because of that. Is that a form of harm? Or are we just like getting so far removed from, but I mean obviously I'm not being physically harmed by it, assuming that there's no diseases, there's no like you're gonna trip and fall over the garbage or whatever, right? Assuming there's nothing, no negative effects, which there usually are, which is maybe why we dislike it. But assuming there were no negative effects, would that still be immoral? Would that still be bad? Well, everyone left the game. I walked away. Having a wireless headset is awesome, but no, it's just interesting things to think about, and I find it fascinating, and I've gotten way far afield. But I just thought that was an interesting point that Destiny made. I thought that in the comments when I noticed that myself doing that, I'm like, huh, I had to rethink my prior view, or not even prior view, but my prior in the sense of my prior um, confirmation bias, and I had to examine that just for like this relatively minor thing. And I don't know if most people operate in the world that way. In fact, I think they probably don't. Yeah, I think they probably don't. And I know I didn't used to. This is like a like being a deep thinker who considers things deep think. I mean, I guess modesty didn't come along with this insight, but being someone who thinks about things in a deeper way than I used to, it's different. I think it's different in good ways. Now, maybe you can like go too far down the rabbit hole and like lose your mind because you spend so much time focusing on like analyzing every minute detail that you don't pay attention to the world around you and you just like waste your life away and you don't actually act and do. Like that's a big thing that I've noticed. That I'm a super analytical person and doing doing and thinking are very different things.